And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Tom Vasel.
Hey folks, today we're taking a look at a game called Quarriors Light and Dark. Now, Quarriors Light vs. Dark is an actual standalone game, although it has a lot of similarities and is actually compatible with Quarriors, the dice deck building game. Quarriors from WizKids was a very popular game, had, I believe, 3 expansions thus far. And for those of you keeping track, right now, I'm using the Quarterfacts box here. Everything fits absolutely snugly in this. There is no more room for expansions after this. But anyway, back to Quarterfacts. Quarterfacts is a game, and I'm going to explain how to play it. Even though it plays very similar to Quarriors, there are some differences. So let's take a look. At the beginning of the game, each player gets a bag of their color, and they place a cube over here where you're going to keep track of your points. In this game, they're known as glory. Each player is going to take 4 brown assistant dice and put them in their bag, and then they're going to take 2 basic quiddity dice. These dice are bigger than the rest of the dice, and put them in front of them. You're then going to randomly make a setup here. There are 3 different assistant cards, and you'll pick one of those randomly, and then you're going to put out in front of you here different creatures and spells. You can see there's 6 different creatures here and 2 different spells. Each of those has 5 dice that go with it. Now, for each of these different creatures, there's more than 1 card that go with the dice. For example, here, Beelzebub, and yes, I will get over that name eventually. But anyway, Beelzebub here matches these 5 dice, but as you're setting up, perhaps you might have the lesser Beelzebub, or strong Beelzebub, or mighty Beelzebub, or greater Beelzebub. Each of these has different stats and special abilities, but they all use the same 5 dice, so when you're setting out randomly, you can only have 1 of each type. There are 2 types of dice in the game, basically. There are these creatures, and then there are spells, which this Dark Enchantment is an example of those. Now, on a player's turn, what they're going to do is they're going to draw dice from their bag. For the first 2 turns of the game, you simply draw 2 dice from the bag. After that, you'll draw 3. You add those dice to the big basic quiddity dice, and you roll them. When you roll them, you're going to get different results, but usually you're going to roll quiddity. So let's take a look here at the roll I just rolled. Here I've rolled 7 quiddity. 2 of that quiddity is light quiddity. There is both light quiddity and dark quiddity. Let me show you an example of dark quiddity. So that would be dark quiddity if I rolled that. And you can use quiddity to do a couple of things. First of all, you can use it to buy more dice. When you buy dice, you will put them in a used pile, and you'll be able to, when you run out of dice to pull out of your bag, you'll put all the dice that you bought into the bag, so you'll be able to roll the different dice. When I want to buy a die, let's say, for example, I want to buy Beelzebub. Well, Beelzebub will cost me 8 quiddity. He only costs 7 quiddity if at least some of the quiddity I use is dark quiddity. Over here you can see the Dark Enchantment has a cost of 6. When I go down here, the Lesser Herald costs 3, but if I use light quiddity, he only costs 2. I can buy 1 die per turn, and so let's say here I have 7, and one of them is dark, so I'll buy Beelzebub. So I take that, all the dice I spent or didn't spend, and stick them in my used pile, and then it's the next turn. Except for these basic quiddity, I'll be rolling these every turn no matter what, and they never go back in my bag. Now as time goes by, sometimes when you roll dice from your bag, you are going to roll a creature. This is for an example of a strong quartz golem here. Now the strong quartz golem has a summoning cost of 1, which means I need to spend 1 quiddity to put him on the table. He has an attack of 3 and a defense of 5. So I leave him here. Let's say on my opponent's turn, they summon a herald, which has a summoning cost of 2 and is a 3/3, and they also summon a lesser boogeyman. So they have an attack of 7 total on their turn. When you summon dice, your dice attack everyone else's dice on the table. This 7 is greater than my 5, so this quiddity, this dice is basically killed and goes to the used pile. If I had out Beelzebub, and let's see if I can find Beelzebub's highest level is a 7. Let's say Beelzebub is here, and I am attacked by an Archangel, and this Archangel does 5 damage. Now, the Archangel is only going to do 5. Beelzebub has a defense here of 7, so he blocks it. If I had a weaker guy, let's say I had this Herald here with my Beelzebub, I could use my Beelzebub to attack. Or, let's say that my opponents did an attack here of 8. So I would suck up 3 on the Herald. There'd be 5 left over, which he would absorb. So I can make some choices, but every time you put dice in front of you, they will attack all the dice that other players have. Now, the reason you want to put dice in front of you is because if they are still in front of you at the beginning of your next turn, you will discard those dice and you will score glory points. This is the main way to get glory points. Each creature has a certain number of glory points that's printed on it. And they also have special abilities based on things. Many of the dice have stars on them. So in this case, Beelzebub here has no special ability, but sometimes on another card, for example this one, he'll get +2 attack if at least 1 light creature is in any player's ready area. So the stars will sometimes give special abilities. Also, on several of the cards, you can see underneath Beelzebub there's a black line and a yellow line over here on the Quartz Golem, and over here on the Archangel. Those are anchored spells, which means anybody can cast those spells in their turn as long as they pay the proper quiddity. For example, for me to cast this one, which lets me get a glory, if I summon at least 1 light creature this turn, I have to spend 2 light quiddity to activate that. And I can do that even if I don't have these dice in front of me. Now, there are other special things on the dice. There are, for example, your basic quiddity. Here, if you roll question mark, you can re-roll this die and another die of your choice. Sometimes, if I was using another one, I can draw 2 extra dice and roll them, or add 2 quiddity when I roll that die. There are also other spells that you can use and keep in front of you. When you roll the one side of these dice, they're going to give more quiddity. But if you roll the spell side, you can save that spell and use it sometimes even as a reaction to another player, as long as the card itself allows it. So the game is going to continue on. Players are going to buy and use these dice, summoning them in front of them to attack other players until one person will eventually get to 15 glory. At that point, the game is over and that person wins the game. Okay, let's take a look at the game as a standalone game. I don't know that there's enough variety here for me to be interested in it long term. Because you're supposed to play with 6 creatures and 2 spells, and the game gives you 6 creatures and 2 spells. Granted, there are 5 different variations of each, but you know, still, it feels like it needs another expansion. Now, granted, you can say, well, there already is an expansion, Vasel. You can just play with Quarriors and Quarterfacts and Quarmageddon and so on. And that's true. You can play with all those dice, and they fit neatly into this game. And in fact, I think I would prefer to play with Quarriors in my Quarriors Light and Dark than the other way around. Now, the whole light-dark quiddity thing, first of all, the dark quiddity symbol doesn't seem dark. It just seems odd. But the whole light-dark quiddity thing is a neat concept, but ends up being a little bit more fiddly, maybe, than it should be. Anchor spells, which seems like they took some of the just coming out this week, Marvel Dice Masters, they took the global effects from that and brought them to this. That's fine. I like that. I think that's a cool idea. It gives some more thought to what cards go out there. And I like that the light and the dark creatures go up against each other. It's just that you're going to have tons of creatures in the game that aren't light and dark if you're mixing it with Quarriors. So it would be nice to see some more light and dark creatures come in the future. I really like the big dice, the basic quiddity dice outside the bag, although it leads to a problem where it is possible on your first roll, if you're lucky, to get a ton of quiddity, you can buy the most expensive guy. Gives you kind of a nice advantage as the game goes by. Now that usually balances out, but you need to play with the optional rule which lets you capture as many Quarrior dice from the wilds as possible. The wilds is the middle section of the table. If you can only buy one, it usually makes sense to buy the most expensive one. But if you can buy multiple dice, it adds more strategic choices. This game does not have my favorite rule from Quarterfacts and Quarmageddon, where you cull the scoring die, and that's because culling in this game is different. Culling is basically the act of taking a die out of your area and putting it back into the wilds. There are cards in this game that allow you to do that to other people. In the original one, you would cull a die every time you scored one, and in the advanced way I played, you culled the scoring die. See, if you get Beelzebub or the Archangel of Light, you can roll them and score lots of points with them, and you never have a care in the world because you're in it again and get them in a few more turns and roll them again. And I thought the game played better when they were culled from your deck. And I still may add that optional rule into this because I like the idea of forcing culling when you score people, especially when you play with Quarterfacts. This game is not 100% compatible with Quarriors. It's mostly compatible, but some things like the Quarterfacts expansion where you went off and things doesn't mesh as well with this. And like I said, the light-dark thing is really integrated into this. And if that's diluted by the dice from regular Quarriors coming in, well, so be it. It's not going to play as smoothly. So I like it. I'm keeping it as an expansion to Quarriors, or Quarriors as an expansion to it. I'm not sure which. They play well together, but I think if I'm going to play with some of these light and dark, I'll play with more of them so that I can see that light versus dark dichotomy. Also, I do like those anchor spells. They're a cool addition to the game. And I wonder if in the future we'll see anchor spells for all the original ones show up, where they all become light or dark. Who knows? It's a good buy, and I think you'll get a lot of fun out of the game. I don't know that I would recommend it over base game Quarriors for new players, because I think Quarriors has more options and more dice. But at the same time, it does add a cool light versus dark dichotomy, which I think some people will enjoy. If you like Quarriors, you'll like this. If you don't like Quarriors, you won't. Doesn't change it enough for most people to care. But if you already have Quarriors and you're looking at getting an expansion, I think you'll enjoy that and you'll find some neat, new, interesting things here. If you haven't bought either one and you're not sure which one to get, that's going to be a tougher choice, but either way, it's still dice pulling from a bag, dice chucking. I still like it. My excitement has died down a bit because the Marvel Dice Masters does what Quarriors done, I think, in a better way, although that's only 2 players, and this goes up to 4 easily. Anyway, that's Quarriors, Light vs. Dark.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at Dicetowernetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.
Shut the door.